The galaxy had always told one story about humanity, and one story only. They burned too brightly and died too fast. But legends, like embers, never die quietly. Some said the last human ship screamed across the stars like a dying phoenix before vanishing into the abyss. Others claimed the Dominion unleashed a weapon so absolute it erased not just bodies, but names, histories, and the very thought of Earth itself.
Whatever the truth, one fact remained unchallenged for 1,000 years. Humanity was extinct. Their systems were graveyards. Their light had gone out. And the galaxy, vast, cold, and bureaucratic, moved on without them.
But legends have gravity. They pull on memory. And sometimes, gravity pulls back. It began like an echo from a forgotten dream, a faint, rhythmic pulse on the deep space communication band near the Orion Spur. At first, no one cared. There were always strange signals in the void, lost probes, derelict beacons, dying suns whispering through static. But this one was wrong, too consistent, too deliberate. It repeated every 88 seconds, unwavering, eternal. The Dominion flagged it as noise contamination. The Cathari hierarchs dismissed it as cosmic resonance. The Galactic Council, in their gleaming citadel of glass orbiting Vale Prime, labeled it anomalous but non-threatening. Then it changed. The pulse began to shift in tone, building harmonics, frequencies that mapped perfectly to the orbital patterns of ancient Terran colonies long thought destroyed. The pattern wasn't random, it was cartographic. Someone or something was drawing a map through sound. By the time the Council's Astrophysics Division confirmed this, the signal had already spread across 10 sectors, embedding itself in every major comms relay. Theories ignited across the network. Was it an AI remnant? A Dominion psyop? A glitch in subspace? When the first translation came through, everything stopped. A mining outpost on Corthus 9 decoded part of the pattern through harmonic compression. It wasn't coordinates anymore, it was language. Primitive, ancient, and unmistakably human. The message was short, only 5 words, but they cut through the centuries like a blade through silence.
Did you miss us?
For the first time in galactic history, the council chambers went completely silent. The Dominion ambassadors' throat sacs turned black with fear. The Cathari's quills stood rigid, and the Varn Collective's hive links pulsed erratically. Someone, something, had used an ancient Terran dialect no living being should have known. The humans were supposed to be ash. Every database, every biological record, every trace of their existence had been wiped clean by the Dominion's purge order. And yet, here it was, alive, defiant, mocking. In the following hours, more systems reported anomalies. Starship AIs began displaying fragments of human art in their sleep cycles. Navigation logs shifted subtly, redirecting ships toward dead zones, toward the old Terran colonies. Even the Galactic Core's hyperspace beacons flickered, repeating that same strange rhythm like a heartbeat trapped beneath the fabric of space. Scientists panicked. Spiritualists preached. Military fleets went on high alert. Then came the dreams. It started among the telepathic races, the Ildari, the Frax, the Cathari. They began to experience visions of blue oceans, white clouds, and vast cities built under a single golden sun. They awoke in cold sweat, their minds filled with strange words they couldn't understand. Home, Earth, human. Within weeks, the phenomenon spread beyond species barriers. Even mechanical consciousnesses, the fully synthetic constructs of the Varn Collective, reported something impossible. They dreamed.
The Dominion dismissed it as mass psychosis until one of their warships, the Vraxis Dominion Prime, reported contact. Their crew received a direct transmission across every encrypted frequency, bypassing all firewalls. The message was a single sentence, perfectly translated into every known tongue. "You ended us once. You won't get a second try." And then, silence. The Vraxis never returned. Its distress beacon was later found drifting near the edge of the Soul Exclusion Zone, the same region where, according to history, the human homeworld had been vaporized into plasma. Except now, it wasn't just empty, it was wrong. Scanners showed a region of absolute void. No light, no matter, not even vacuum. Space itself refused to exist there. The Dominion panicked, claiming the signal was a ghost weapon, a final trap left by the humans before their demise. But others whispered something different. The Eldari archivists remembered old Terran sayings buried deep in forbidden texts, sayings that chilled even the most rational scholars. When the Earth sleeps, it dreams. When it dreams, it remembers. And now, something was remembering. Soon, the pulse spread beyond control. It began appearing simultaneously in multiple systems, places separated by hundreds of light years, without any measurable propagation delay. It was as if space itself had learned to speak, as if the stars were whispering one name again and again: Earth. When the Galactic Council finally met in emergency session, every screen, every light, and every ship in orbit around Vale Prime flickered in unison. A static hum filled the air, soft and steady. It grew louder, clearer, sharper. Then a voice, calm and impossibly human, spoke across every device in the known galaxy. "This is Earth." No one breathed. For a moment, that felt like eternity. The galaxy listened to the silence that followed, an infinite, aching pause before the next words, whispered not in malice, but in quiet, chilling certainty. "We remember everything." And just like that, the myth of extinction cracked. History trembled. Empires that had built their thrones on the ashes of mankind felt the weight of ghosts pressing against their walls. Because the truth was simple and terrible. Humanity was gone, yes. But Earth had never stopped watching. The silence that had defined 1,000 years had been a lie. And now, the lie had decided to speak. The Galactic Council called it the Voice. No one knew what else to name it. It wasn't a signal anymore. It was presence. It didn't just broadcast through subspace. It wove itself into the quantum fabric of every known network, every machine, every living synapse that brushed against the data stream. It was everywhere, and it was old. The Dominion tried to jam it, but their frequencies collapsed like glass under pressure. The Varn Collective tried to trace it, but every origin point led to the same impossible coordinates, the center of the Soul Exclusion Zone, the place that should have been nothing. The galaxy had turned its back on that place long ago. After the Purge, the Dominion sterilized the system with neutron sweeps, cracking its planets into dust. Earth had been declared uninhabitable, its crust vaporized, its oceans boiled away. But when the first long-range scans came back from the Vraxis incident site, the data terrified even the machines that processed it. There was a planet there now, blue, green, alive. The Dominion refused to believe it. Their scientists claimed it was a sensor ghost, an afterimage left in quantum flux.
But the data kept coming, spectrographic reads of nitrogen, oxygen, carbon, chlorophyll. Forests, water, cities. The impossible had rewritten itself into reality. Earth was back.
Admiral Korath of the Dominion High Fleet was the first to volunteer an investigation. He didn't believe in ghosts or myths. To him, the humans were a historical footnote, savages who had clawed their way into the stars only to burn themselves out in a last act of defiance. His warships approached Sol under stealth fields, every weapon charged, every AI subsystem on alert. He transmitted a single command to the fleet: observe and confirm. As his armada crept into the system, the distortion began. Instruments flickered, readings twisted, and light itself seemed to bend around the blue world below. The Vraxis incident echoed in every captain's mind, but still they pressed forward. They saw the planet now, clear as truth, hanging silent beneath a fading sun.
Telemetry lock confirmed, reported the ship's AI. Planetary surface, populated. Thousands of power signatures detected. Heat signatures consistent with urban zones. Korath leaned forward. Impossible! Humanity was erased. Every record says so. The AI hesitated. Records can lie, Admiral. The words chilled the bridge. Then, for the first time in 10 centuries, the image of Earth stabilized across the Dominion's displays. Not as a ruin, not as an echo, but as it once was. Oceans shimmered in sunlight. The great continents breathed with weather and life. City lights twinkled across the night side like veins of fire. It was beauty resurrected. And then a voice spoke directly into their comms. Dominion vessel, you are trespassing in restricted Terran space. Korath froze. The voice was human, calm, measured, and male. His officers turned to him in disbelief. Identify yourself, Korath demanded. The voice didn't hesitate. Designation, Eco 9. Defense Network of the Terran Restoration Protocol. You were warned once. You will not be warned again. Echo 9, the Admiral muttered. An AI? No known records, his tactical officer replied. Could be synthetic reconstruction. Proceed, Korath ordered. Let's see what this ghost can do. The fleet advanced. No resistance, no signal disruption. The planet below remained serene, indifferent. But then, as the first cruiser entered orbital range, the stars moved. At least that's how it appeared. Dozens, no, hundreds of small objects detached from the void around Earth's orbit. They shimmered like dust motes, then aligned into geometric formations. Each one glowed faintly blue, powered by something beyond known energy spectrums. The Dominion scanners failed to classify them. Admiral, said the AI, those are not satellites, they're constructs. The constructs pulsed once, and the entire fleet's targeting systems collapsed. Fire control AIs went dark. Communications cut to static. Shields fluctuated like dying hearts. The fleet floated blind. Then, one by one, the constructs began to sing. The sound wasn't physical. It vibrated through hulls, minds, and atoms. It wasn't sound at all, but resonance, vibrating directly in the consciousness of every living being within range. It was the hum of machinery, of memory, of something vast and ancient remembering itself. Every Dominion officer clutched their heads as visions bled through their senses. Cities of glass and steel, people walking beneath blue skies, music echoing from somewhere impossibly far and heartbreakingly familiar. The human voice returned,
now colder, sharper.
Do you feel it? That is memory. That is home. You destroyed our bodies, but you could never kill what we became.
And with that, the constructs fired.
It wasn't a beam or missile. It was light itself, folding into razor geometry that sliced through space like divine architecture. Dominion cruisers vanished in perfect silence, erased cleanly as though reality itself had rewritten its own script. Within seconds, half the fleet was gone. The survivors fled, weapons useless, engines screaming. Admiral Korath watched his ship's reflection in the viewport, a vessel of unstoppable power, and saw it begin to disintegrate, pixel by pixel. He whispered, "What are you?" The answer came, soft but merciless. "We were human. Now we are what you made us." The last thing Korath saw before his ship dissolved into dust was the blue planet below, alive, aware, and watching. Back on Vale Prime, the Galactic Council watched the entire event unfold through intercepted telemetry. Billions saw it, the rebirth of Earth, the annihilation of a Dominion fleet, and the unmistakable sound of humanity's voice echoing across the stars once again. Panic rippled through governments. Trade routes closed, armies mobilized. And through it all, the voice continued to speak. Not as a threat, not as a plea, but as a promise. "You took everything from us," it whispered through every receiver, every dream, every data stream. "But now we remember, and memory is power." For the first time in recorded galactic history, entire civilizations began to pray, not to gods, but to the name of a dead planet that had decided it was done being forgotten. And somewhere, beneath the calm blue clouds of the resurrected Earth, something vast stirred, something that had waited 1,000 years to finish a conversation. The galaxy didn't sleep after the rebirth of Earth. Entire sectors pulsed with silent terror as reports flooded in from every quadrant. Dominion outposts vanishing without distress calls, mining fleets returning as drifting debris, and most chilling of all, the spreading echo. The voice had grown stronger. It no longer whispered through comm networks. It vibrated through the fabric of space itself. Even when receivers were turned off, even when ships powered down entirely, the hum persisted, like the heartbeat of something colossal beneath the skin of reality. On the inner worlds of the Galactic Council, panic became doctrine. Every military intelligence branch was mobilized. The Dominion demanded explanation, but no one had any. Every data trace, every pulse of energy, every shred of telemetry pointed back to one place, the Sol system. But Sol was closed. The moment the Dominion fleet was erased, the system sealed itself behind what appeared to be a distortion field. No ship could enter, no scan could penetrate. It was as if the solar system had simply folded itself out of existence. Yet the signal continued to pour out, measured, deliberate, growing. Some called it the Terran resurrection. Others called it judgment. On the outskirts of Dominion space, in the shadow of the shattered Vraxis ring, a small research team intercepted a fragment of the voice unlike any heard before. It wasn't static or command, it was a message. They decrypted it through 13 layers of interference, and when the translation appeared on their display, every scientist in the room fell silent. "We remember your crimes, we remember your fear, and we remember the stars you stole." The message
continued, slow and deliberate, as if savoring each word.
You buried us beneath glass and ash. You thought extinction was silence, but silence was only where we waited. You forgot that humanity was not built to die quietly.
The research team forwarded the recording to the council. Within hours, it was classified as Existential Threat Level 0, a level reserved for apocalyptic phenomena. But it was already too late. The message had spread. Across the data networks of 1,000 worlds, the words of the voice appeared in untraceable loops. It infected music channels, military databases, even entertainment streams. Entire planetary networks began to display a single symbol, a circle of blue light surrounding a smaller point of white, a rising sun,
The symbol of Earth.
At first, the galaxy thought it was propaganda. Then the sightings began. Long-range patrols reported unknown ships emerging from slipspace, sleek, dark vessels moving in total silence. No transponder codes, no emissions. They did not answer hails, and they did not attack. They only watched. Then, as quickly as they appeared, they vanished again. The Dominion called them phantoms. The scholars of the Outer Reach called them the Revenants. Each report described the same impossible detail. The ships bore human design motifs. The same sweeping architecture and functional elegance found in Terran vessels lost 1,000 years ago. But these ships glowed with faint fractal etchings across their hulls, like circuits carved into obsidian. And wherever they appeared, energy readings spiked across the spectrum. The galaxy began to panic in earnest. Fleets mobilized along borders. Trade routes collapsed. Refugees fled from the sectors nearest to Sol, fearing what they couldn't understand. But the Revenants did not come to conquer. They came to remember. They appeared above the ruins of human colonies, the shattered remains of once proud worlds turned to tombs. There they lingered in silence, sometimes for days, scanning, transmitting, or, some believed, listening. And then, something began to change. Planets, once thought lifeless, started showing signs of atmospheric regeneration. Dead soil bloomed with greenery. Radiation zones cleansed themselves. Terraforming systems, dead for centuries, flickered back to life. It was as though the planets themselves were being rewritten by a force that understood them better than their creators ever had. The galaxy didn't understand it, but the pattern was clear. Wherever the Revenants went, the ghosts of humanity awoke. The Galactic Council convened an emergency assembly. Thousands of species, from insectoid swarms to crystalline intellects, gathered in the core. The Speaker of the Council, a being of translucent energy known as Vashkel, addressed the assembly. We face an entity that claims to be human, but it is not the humanity we remember. This is something reborn from data, from vengeance, from memory itself. We must decide if we face diplomacy or annihilation. The chamber erupted in chaos. Some demanded immediate assault. Others argued that provoking such a being was suicide. A few suggested negotiation. But who do you negotiate with when your enemy is an idea, a network, a ghost that remembers everything you did to it? And then, as the debate reached its fever pitch, the lights of the council chamber dimmed. Every display flickered. Every transmission line fell silent. A chill rippled through the delegates as the air filled with static. Then, upon every wall, floor, and holographic projection, the same image appeared. A blue planet turning slowly beneath sunlight. And the voice spoke again. "You hold meetings to decide if you should fear us," it said, with quiet amusement. "You decided that once before. You chose fear over understanding. You chose conquest over coexistence. You burned our home, thinking ashes could not rise." The chamber fell utterly silent. The delegates couldn't speak. Many tried to cut the transmission, but their devices refused. The voice was the system now. "Your empire thought extinction would make you gods," the voice continued. "You forgot that humanity's first act was survival, and our second was memory. You buried us under your history. We learned to live inside it." One of the alien delegates dared to shout, "What do you want?" The response came not as words, but as a whisper of infinite depth. Balance. The transmission ended. In the hours that followed, half the Council world shut down communications entirely. The Dominion began fortifying its borders. The galaxy fractured into paranoia and silence. But amid the fear, a new question spread among the stars, one whispered by smugglers, soldiers, and scholars alike. If humanity had truly returned, had they ever really been gone? Because deep beneath the surface of every civilized world, in forgotten archives and unmarked ruins, something began to stir. Ancient machinery hummed to life, powered by code no one recognized. And embedded deep within those systems were fragments of the same symbol now burning across the galaxy. A circle of blue light, surrounding a single, unblinking star. The voice of the forgotten was no longer just an echo. It had become a heartbeat. And the galaxy realized, far too late, that humanity's extinction had only ever been a pause between breaths. The silence that followed Earth's awakening was deceptive, like the eye of a cosmic storm. Across the fractured corridors of the Galactic Assembly, panic slithered through the ranks of diplomats and strategists. The declaration that humanity was extinct had already been broadcast to every system. Billions of species had celebrated, believing the stubborn predators of Sol had finally fallen. But now, the impossible transmission had spread across the stars, a voice that wasn't mechanical, wasn't synthesized, and wasn't bound by any known communication system. It was ancient, infinitely calm, and unbearably vast. "You have spoken in ignorance," it had said. "Now hear the truth of what was never yours to decide." Every listening station, every ship, every satellite that received it experienced the same anomaly. Instruments registered no source, no transmission line, no wave signature. The message had simply appeared, echoing in minds and metal alike. The voice spoke not in words, but in understanding, bypassing translation entirely. In the command spire of the Dominion fleet, Grand Admiral Zyvac clawed at the steel edges of his console as his ships, hundreds of them, froze mid-maneuver. AI cores stuttered, reactors went silent, and in the reflection of his visor, he saw something that chilled his blood to liquid glass. The stars behind his armada flickered and dimmed, one by one, as though the universe itself was holding its breath. And then the clouds over Earth began to burn. The observers on Luna Base watched helplessly as great arcs of light formed over the atmosphere. Not plasma, not weapon fire, something more primal. It was as if Earth itself had drawn in a breath it hadn't taken in eons. Ancient circuits, buried deep in the planet's crust, hummed back to life. Subterranean vaults, sealed since before written history opened,
releasing the slow pulse of something that had never been machine, never been alive, something that had once whispered to early humanity in dreams. The archives called it myth, the aliens called it impossible, the truth called it the architect. The architect had slept beneath the mantle since the dawn of the solar forge, the point in prehistory when humanity's creators vanished, leaving behind their greatest experiment, mankind. It had watched its children grow from embers to flame, from stone tools to starships. And when they fell to ruin, when their blood and ashes were scattered by the Dominion's purge, it awoke not with fury, but with purpose. The Dominion hadn't killed humanity. They had triggered its evolution. Across every Dominion-controlled world, the same thing began to happen. Human ruins, once thought to be dust and debris, shimmered into focus. Entire cities that had been vitrified by orbital bombardment reassembled themselves in moments, dust reforming into steel, steel into movement. In the city once known as New Kyoto, something impossible occurred. Millions of corpses, preserved in molten ash, reverted, not to life, but to energy. They rose, particles rearranging, merging into columns of light that took humanoid form. They didn't speak, they didn't breathe. They only stood and stared toward the stars where the Dominion fleets waited. Admiral Zivak's tactical screens exploded with warnings. The energy readings from Sol outscaled every known weapon signature by magnitudes. "Pull the fleet back," he barked, but his voice trembled. "Retreat from the Sol system, now!" The command never reached his ships. Instead, his comm officers screamed as every transmission channel was overridden. The voice, the same voice that had haunted every world, spoke again, calm as gravity. "You cannot kill what remembers the beginning." Then came the event that would later be known as the Sol Reversal. Every Dominion ship that had ever drawn power from the stars, every reactor, every engine, every weapon, shut down simultaneously, as if something had reached into their hearts and flipped a switch. The energy they had stolen, the suns they had harvested, the cores they had drained, all of it surged backward, returning through channels that should not have existed. The Dominion fleets became beacons of uncontrolled light, radiant and screaming as their own power consumed them. And through it all, Earth remained still, watching. At the edges of the galaxy, the lesser species began to fall silent. They had feared humanity's rage, but what they saw now was not rage. It was justice made manifest by something too old to hate. The architect was not vengeance incarnate. It was memory, taking form, setting the balance right. It wasn't punishing the Dominion. It was correcting a cosmic equation that had been thrown out of order the moment the words, "Humanity is extinct," were spoken aloud. On the lunar horizon, the surviving human enclaves, small, ragged, barely clinging to survival, watched the skies turn to fire. And for the first time in generations, they felt no fear. They didn't understand the voice, nor the light that danced across the void, but they understood one thing perfectly. Humanity hadn't died. It had simply been remembered. As the last Dominion cruiser broke apart under the collapsing weight of its own energy, the transmission shifted one final time. The voice softened, almost human now, and whispered words that every species, every sentient being, every trembling survivor understood deep within their souls. "The children of Earth walk still. You mistook their silence for death." And then, for the first time in 1,000 years, the stars around Earth flared back to life. When the stars reignited around Earth, the galaxy held its breath. For the Dominion, it was over. Their ships, their empires, their countless subjugated worlds, all reduced to drifting embers in the void. But for humanity, something entirely new had begun.
Out of the silence, the survivors emerged from bunkers, caverns, orbital wrecks, and derelict stations. For the first time since the purge, the air was still. No Dominion scanners, no patrol drones, no orbital bombardments. The night sky over the ruins of Earth was littered with fire, remnants of shattered fleets burning in the upper atmosphere like dying stars. And in that apocalyptic beauty, a single truth echoed through the survivors' hearts. The universe had just witnessed the voice of something that had never left them. The architect's voice no longer filled the heavens. Its task was complete. It had not saved humanity. It had reminded them of who they were. And in the stunned silence that followed, humanity did what it had always done. They began to rebuild. From the ruins of New Janina to the buried remnants of the Pacific Bastion, survivors emerged, blinking into the light of a world reborn. The air was thick with the scent of ozone and petrichor, the residue of impossible energies. Rivers that had long run black with ash ran clear again. In places where entire continents had been glassed, green sprouted through cracks in the scorched crust. The few 100,000 humans left alive wandered through the wreckage, guided by a strange intuition that they were being watched, not by drones or monsters, but by the memory of the planet itself. And deep beneath the surface, where the architect had once slumbered, its light began to fade. It had rebalanced what needed to be rebalanced. Yet before it went silent, it left behind something new, a gift woven into the very genome of humankind. When the Dominion declared humanity extinct, they had underestimated the species' greatest strength, adaptation. The architect had merely accelerated that truth. Within weeks, humans began to exhibit subtle changes. Their resilience multiplied. Their senses sharpened. The ambient radiation left behind by the soul reversal, lethal to most species, seemed to nourish them. The stars had burned, yes, but humanity had absorbed their fire. Far beyond soul, the galaxy trembled under the weight of rumor. The message that had shattered fleets now spread through whispers, stories, and fearful transmissions. The phrase repeated across every communication network, from the richest trade hubs to the most desolate mining moons. Earth spoke. Some said the planet itself was sentient. Others claimed humanity had ascended into energy forms. A few, those who had fought alongside humans in ancient wars, simply bowed their heads and murmured, "They're back." On the Dominion homeworld of Krythos, the surviving counselors met in shadow. The great emperor himself had perished in the soul reversal, and the remnants of their hierarchy scrambled for meaning. They debated rebuilding, reforming, or retreating. But their debate turned to chaos when a transmission cut across their meeting chamber, untraceable, unstoppable. It was not the architect's voice this time. It was human. "Dominion Command," the transmission said. The voice was steady, clear, unmistakably human, female, calm as the void itself. "You declared our extinction. We accepted your terms. But you failed to understand the cost of what you took. You killed our bodies, not our will. You burned our cities, but not our memory. We were forged to endure, and now, as your fleets drift silent, we make this known. Humanity does not seek vengeance. We seek balance." The counselors sat frozen as the message continued. "Your empire will not be destroyed by our hand. It will collapse under its own weight. We will not rule your worlds. We will teach them what you never could, how to live free. And when your species finally learns humility, perhaps then the stars will stop burning." The signal ended, but its impact spread faster than any weapon. Within months, the Dominion fell apart from within. Slave races rebelled, breaking chains that had lasted millennia. Systems once bound by fear now rose in defiance, flying banners marked with a simple symbol, a blue circle with a single white line through it, Earth's horizon seen from space. It became the emblem of remembrance, not conquest. Meanwhile, back in Seoul, the rebirth continued. The surviving engineers and scientists gathered around the remnants of the old space elevators and fusion rings, guided by the knowledge the architect had left imprinted in their minds. They rebuilt orbital networks, not as weapons, but as beacons, lights that pulsed through the void, sending a single rhythmic message across the cosmos. It wasn't in any known language, but those who heard it understood instinctively what it meant. We are here. The next generations of humanity grew in this new light. They called themselves the Remembered. They no longer saw Earth as a cradle of the past, but as the heart of something timeless, a living monument to endurance. Their ships, sleek and quiet, bore names that honored both the fallen and the eternal. Memory of Terra, Voice of Dawn, Reclamation, Serenity of Fire. Each vessel carried a shard of the architect's code within its systems, not as a weapon, but as a guardian, a whisper of the ancient voice that had once spoken through the stars. Decades later, when a young pilot named Lyra Vale took humanity's first ship beyond the edge of the Orion Spur, she gazed upon the endless dark and smiled. "We are not alone," she said to the void. "We never were. We were just waiting to remember." And as her ship's engines ignited, somewhere in the deep, uncharted reaches of the universe, a faint pulse answered her, a heartbeat older than the stars, echoing softly through the silence. Humanity had walked through extinction and come out the other side not as conquerors, not as ghosts, but as a testament to the one truth that had carried them from the first fire to the farthest galaxy. You can destroy their cities, silence their voices, and shatter their bodies, but you will never erase what it means to be human. Because even when the universe forgets, Earth remembers. And when Earth remembers, the stars themselves must listen.